He died as John Doe. No wallet, no identification, just bright Bermuda shorts, white sneakers, and a lime green shirt on a hospital gurney. The doctors didn't know they just lost one of the greatest voices in American music history. They tagged his body and sent it to the morgue. It would take FBI fingerprints to tell the world that David Ruffin was gone. This is the story of a man whose voice could make you believe in love, whose pain was as raw as his talent was undeniable, and whose demons finally caught up with him in a West Philadelphia crack house on a summer morning in 1991. From the church pews of Mississippi to the bright lights of Motown, from #1 records to dying nameless on a slab, this is the David Ruffin story. If you love uncovering hidden legends like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to Legends Underrated. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? January 18th, 1941. Whynot, Mississippi. A town so small, so forgotten, that even its name sounds like a question the universe couldn't answer. And on that cold January day, a boy named Davis Eli Ruffin entered the world at the exact moment his mother left it. Ophelia Ruffin died bringing him into this life, and that absence, that gaping wound, would echo through every note he ever sang. His father, Eli Ruffin, was a Baptist minister, a man of God with a stern hand and high expectations. The Ruffin household ran on gospel music and fear. Sundays meant church, weekdays meant chores, and every day meant singing. David, along with his older brother Jimmy and their siblings, sang in their father's church. Those weren't performances, they were survival. Because in that house, in that life, music was the only language that could transform pain into something beautiful. Young David had a voice that didn't match his skinny frame. Big horn-rimmed glasses, thin as a rail. But when he opened his mouth, something ancient and aching poured out. Something that made grown folks stop mid-conversation and listen. By his teens, he knew that Whynot, Mississippi wasn't big enough to hold what he was carrying inside. So he did what dreamers do. He left. By the time David Ruffin was a teenager, he'd already sung with gospel groups across the South, the Dixie Nightingales, the Staple Singers. He tasted the road, felt the electricity of a crowd hanging on every syllable, and he wanted more. So around 1959, 58, somewhere in that haze, David made his way to Detroit, the Motor City, where Berry Gordy was building something called Motown. Imagine this, a 16-year-old kid from Mississippi living in Berry Gordy's father's house, helping to literally construct a building that would become Hitsville, USA. David Ruffin wasn't just dreaming about Motown. He was laying the bricks, mixing the concrete, building the stage he'd one day command. And while he worked, he watched, he learned. He sang with a group called the Voice Masters, where he met Marvin Gaye, another hungry young singer packing records and chasing glory. But David wasn't built for the background. His older brother Jimmy was already making moves in music, and when Jimmy went on tour with a group called the Temptations, he came back with news. They need a tenor, Jimmy said. They need someone who can sing. And David Ruffin knew with every fiber of his being that he was that someone. New Year's Eve, 1963, the Temptations were performing at a Motown party, and David Ruffin walked onto that stage uninvited, grabbed the microphone, and sang like his life depended on it, because it did. The Temptations had been searching for a replacement for Elbridge Bryant, a guy who decided being a milkman was safer than chasing stardom. And when David Ruffin opened his mouth that night, the search was over. In January 1964, David officially joined the Temptations. Otis Williams, Melvin Franklin, Eddie Kendricks, Paul Williams, and now David Ruffin, the Classic Five. But here's the thing. David didn't start in the spotlight. He sang background. He waited. He learned the choreography, the harmonies, the Motown discipline. And while Eddie Kendricks and Paul Williams took the leads, a man named Smokey Robinson was watching David closely. Smokey saw something the others didn't. He called David a sleeping giant, a voice that was mellow and gruff at the same time, a voice that could belt and break your heart in the same breath. Smokey knew that if he could write the perfect song for that voice, he could change everything. So he went to work. November 1964, a Motown studio, Smokey Robinson and Ronnie White had written a song called My Girl. Simple, sweet, aching. And they built it specifically for David Ruffin's voice. When David stepped up to that microphone, he wasn't just singing lyrics. He was channeling every Sunday morning in his father's church, every mile he'd walked from Whynot to Detroit, every ounce of longing he'd ever felt. I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. That opening line, sung in David's voice, was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. The Funk Brothers laid down that iconic bass line, James Jameson's fingers walking up and down the fretboard like a heartbeat. Robert White's guitar shimmered, the Detroit Symphony strings swelled, and David Ruffin sang like he was testifying. The song was released in December 1964. By March 6, 1965, it hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, The Temptations' first #1 single, and just like that, David Ruffin became the voice of a generation. Marvin Gaye, one of Motown's brightest stars, said it best. I heard in his voice a strength my own voice lacked. 1965 to 1968, the Classic Five era. The Temptations weren't just a group, they were a cultural phenomenon. And David Ruffin was the engine. Ain't too proud to beg, beauty is only skin deep, I know I'm losing you, I wish it would rain. Every single, a masterpiece. Every performance, a revival. David stood 6'3", skinny, intense, with those big glasses and that bigger voice. He'd spin the microphone, drop into a split, rise back up, and make every woman in the audience feel like he was singing directly to her soul. He was electric, unstoppable, and he knew it. Stories like these are why I built Legends Underrated. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more untold legends. David even created the four-headed microphone stand, an innovation that let all 5 Temptations perform and dance without crowding around one mic. He was a perfectionist, a visionary, and slowly, dangerously, he began to see himself as more than 1/5 of the Temptations. He began to see himself as the star. Fame is a drug, and David Ruffin was already using the other kind, cocaine. It started small, recreational, a way to keep up with the grueling tour schedule. But by 1967, it wasn't recreational anymore. It was survival, and it was destroying him. He started missing rehearsals, showing up late to performances, or not showing up at all. While the other Temptations traveled together, David rode in a custom limousine, the doors painted with his trademark black rimmed glasses. And sitting next to him was Tammy Terrell, the beautiful young Motown singer he'd fallen for. Their relationship was passionate. It was also violent. David's addiction fueled jealousy, paranoia, rage. He proposed to Tammy on stage, only for her to discover he was still married to his wife Sandra with 3 daughters at home. And in 1967, after David hit Tammy in the head with a motorcycle helmet during an argument, she ended it. Tammy Terrell would die 3 years later from brain cancer, but she always believed the trauma from David contributed to her suffering. By 1968, David Ruffin's ego had grown as large as his talent. He watched Diana Ross become the focal point of the Supremes, watched the group's name change to Diana Ross and the Supremes, and he wanted the same. He demanded it. David Ruffin and the Temptations, he told Otis Williams. Make me the star. Otis Williams said no. This was a group, a brotherhood. They'd made a promise that fame wouldn't change them. But David had already changed. He demanded financial records. He questioned Berry Gordy's accounting. He missed shows. And finally, in June 1968, the other four Temptations made a decision. David Ruffin was out. He didn't see it as getting fired. How could you fire someone from a group of that magnitude, he'd later say. But fired he was, replaced by Dennis Edwards. And just like that, the Classic Five era was over. David Ruffin, the voice that had carried the Temptations to the mountaintop, was alone. David launched his solo career in 1969 with My Whole World Ended the Moment You Left Me. It was a top 10 hit, heartbreak wrapped in strings and pain. It was good, but it wasn't my girl. Nothing would ever be my girl again. He released albums, Feeling Good, Me and Rock and Roll Are Here to Stay. In 1975, he had another hit, Walk Away from Love, produced by Van McCoy. It went top 10, gold record. For a moment, it felt like David Ruffin might reclaim his throne, but the moment passed, the hits dried up, the addiction deepened. He tried to reunite with the Temptations in 1982, a reunion tour. Old friends, old magic. But David missed the first 3 shows. Cocaine. Again. The reunion fell apart. He tried again and again. Brief collaborations with Eddie Kendricks, a performance with Daryl Hall and John Oates at the Apollo, Live Aid in 1985. Flashes of brilliance, glimpses of what could have been. In 1989, the Temptations were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. David stood on that stage with Otis, Melvin, Eddie, and the ghost of Paul Williams. He was honored, celebrated, a legend, and he was broke, penniless, living with his girlfriend Diane Showers in Philadelphia, still chasing the high that kept slipping further away. June 1st, 1991. David Ruffin had just returned from a month-long tour of England with Eddie Kendricks and Dennis Edwards. They'd grossed nearly $300,000. Success, applause, standing ovations. For a few weeks, David Ruffin was a star again. But back in Philadelphia, the demons were waiting. That night, David went to a West Philadelphia crack house with a friend named Donald Brown. 10 vials of crack cocaine in less than 30 minutes. His body couldn't take it. He collapsed. Brown panicked. He loaded David into a limousine and drove him to the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. He dropped him off at the emergency room entrance just before 3 a.m. and disappeared. David was wearing bright, multicolored Bermuda shorts, a lime green sports shirt, white sneakers, no wallet, no ID, no indication that this was the man who'd sung My Girl to millions. The doctors worked for an hour, but at 3:55 a.m., David Eli Ruffin was pronounced dead because adverse reaction to cocaine. The body was tagged John Doe and sent to the medical examiner's office. It wasn't until the afternoon, when FBI fingerprints came back, that anyone knew who he was. This twist shocked the world. And if you never want to miss stories like this, make sure you're subscribed to Legends Underrated. And don't forget to like the video if this story moved you. His family suspected foul play. A money belt with $40,000 from the tour was missing. Questions swirled, but the official ruling stood. Accidental overdose. Michael Jackson, who idolized the Temptations, paid $7,000 for David's funeral expenses. Aretha Franklin covered the printing costs. The service was held at New Bethel Baptist Church in Detroit, the city where David Ruffin had built his dreams. And as mourners filled the pews, The Temptations, Otis Williams, Melvin Franklin, and the others stood at the front and sang. They sang My Girl, the same song that had made David a star. The same song he poured his soul into in November 1964. The same song that proved a kid from Whynot, Mississippi could change the world with nothing but his voice. And as those opening notes filled the church, as the memories flooded back, everyone in that room understood the tragedy. David Ruffin had everything, and he lost it all. Rolling Stone magazine has ranked David Ruffin as one of the 100 greatest singers of all time. Not just in soul music, in all of music. His voice is woven into the fabric of American culture. My Girl has been certified 7 times platinum. It's in the Grammy Hall of Fame. The Library of Congress preserved it as culturally and historically significant. But David Ruffin's story isn't just about the music. It's about a boy from a town called Whynot who refused to accept that fate. It's about talent so bright it burned everyone who got too close, including himself. It's about addiction, ego, pain, and the price of genius. In 1991, David Ruffin died alone in a hospital, his identity unknown, but his voice will never die. Every time someone plays My Girl, every time those opening bass notes hit, David Ruffin is alive again, demanding, passionate, aching, immortal. From Whynot, Mississippi to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, from church pews to stadiums, from #1 records to a John Doe toe tag, this was David Ruffin, a voice that moved mountains, a man who could never quite outrun his demons, and a legend who proved that sometimes the brightest stars burn the fastest. Rest in power, David. The world will never forget your voice.